Stop everything you are doing right now. Pay attention. Listen closely. If this were your very last breath, what would your memory be? I want to take you through a unique experience, so do this right now. Close your eyes for 3 seconds and answer honestly. When was the last time you made a completely new decision? I'm not talking about choosing between pizza and a burger. I'm talking about doing something your 10-year-ago self would never do. Acting in a way that completely breaks the pattern of who you have always been. Think hard. When? If you are having trouble answering, it's because the truth is this. You don't make new decisions. You repeat old decisions in different packaging. It's always the same choice, disguised, repackaged. But deep down, it's the same reflex, the same reaction, the same fear governing everything. And you know what's crazier? You think you're living in the present, but you aren't. You are living in a time loop, stuck in a scene that happened 15, 20 years ago. And you repeat this scene every day, hoping that this time the ending will be different. But it never is, because the script hasn't changed. Let me ask you a dangerous question. What if the past didn't exist? What if everything you think happened to you was just a story? A narrative you built, edited, and refined over the years until it became your truth. Because that is what it is. The past is fiction. It's a sequence of electrical impulses in your brain that you call memory. But in reality, it is just interpretation. You don't remember what happened. You remember the story you told yourself about what happened. And that story, it defines you. It traps you. It kills you slowly. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you something that will completely change how you see your own life. I'm going to show you that you aren't the prisoner of the past. You are the jailer, and the key has always been in your pocket. But a warning, once you see this, you can't unsee it. And you will have to make a choice. Continue being the victim of your own story, or become the author of it. So if you want to stay comfortable, if you want to keep your ready-made excuses for why your life isn't what you wanted, close this video now. But if you are ready to face the most brutal truth about yourself, stick with me. I'm going to tell you about a phenomenon that physicists know, but most people completely ignore. Time is not linear. At least not the way you think. There is only now. This moment. This instant. Everything else is a mental construction. The past doesn't exist anywhere except in your head. The future doesn't either. But you spend all your energy trying to live in two places that don't exist. You relive the past constantly. Every time you think, I am this way because that happened, you are in the past. Every time you justify yourself, you are in the past. Every time you avoid something because last time it went wrong, you are in the past. And the future? You are constantly imagining scenarios, planning, fearing, waiting, but never, never, ever are you here. And the paradox? The only place where you can actually live, the only moment where you have power, is exactly this one. Now. But you waste this power feeding a ghost. Do you know the difference between a free man and a prisoner? It isn't what happened to them. It's what they do with what happened. Two men go through the same betrayal. One spends the next 20 years building walls, never trusting again, never taking risks again. He lives a whole life in defensive mode. He dies alone, bitter, but right. The other? He feels the pain, processes it, and then decides, I won't let a person who betrayed me 10 years ago decide how I'm going to love today. Which of the two is free? The first one thinks he is protecting himself, but he just traded one prison for another. The prison of being with the wrong person for the prison of never being with anyone real. The second one understood something fundamental. What happened does not determine what happens unless you let it. And here is the trick nobody tells you. You have to let it go. Consciously, actively, every day. The past has no power of its own. It has no will. It has no strength. It is just memory. It is just data. The power it has over you, you give it that. Every time you repeat the story, every time you use it as an explanation, every time you let it vote on your decisions. There is a mechanism that happens in your head that nobody explains to you, and when you understand it, everything changes. It works like this. At some point in your life, something hurt, a lot. Maybe you were rejected. Maybe you were abandoned. Maybe you failed publicly and were humiliated. And in that moment, your brain, trying to protect you from feeling that again, created a rule. Okay, this can never happen again. And from that day on, every decision you take goes through that filter. You don't even notice. It's automatic, unconscious. You meet an incredible person, but something about them vaguely reminds you of the one who betrayed you. So you sabotage it. You pick a fight. You create distance. And when it ends, you say, I knew it was going to go wrong. No. You made it go wrong because you were afraid it would go wrong. You have a business opportunity, but way back when, you tried to start a business and went bust. So now you invent 1,000 logical reasons not to try. It's not the right time. The market is tough. I need to prepare more. But the truth? You are operating with a manual written by a broken guy, and that guy doesn't exist anymore. But his rules still govern your life. It's like having antivirus software that was programmed in 1995 and never updated. It blocks everything, because every threat looks like that old virus. So you don't open new emails, you don't visit new sites, you don't install new programs, and you think you are safe, but you are just isolated. This defense system you built, it doesn't know the war is over. It doesn't know the enemy has already left. It only knows that one day you were wounded, and it swore it would never let that happen again. So it blocks everything, especially the good things, especially the real opportunities, because they always come disguised as risk. And risk, for your defense system, is synonymous with danger. But here is the brutal truth. There is no growth without risk. There is no love without vulnerability. There is no fulfillment without the possibility of failure. So when you avoid risk, you aren't protecting yourself. You are suffocating yourself. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago when he wrote, "Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." You read that and thought the deceiver is someone on the outside, right? It isn't. The deceiver is you. It's the voice in your head that says, "This is just who I am." It's the story you tell about why you can't, shouldn't, or won't succeed. The present necessity. The comfort of staying the same person. Why change? Changing means giving up your identity. And identity, even if it's an identity of suffering, gives security. It's better to be the guy who was betrayed and never trusted again than to be who you don't even know. And that not knowing terrifies you more than any pain. Let me tell you something about identity that will sound strange. You don't have one. Not really. You think you do. You say, I am anxious, I am suspicious, I am this way, I am that way. But that isn't identity. It is habit. It is pattern. It is repetition. The truth is that you are pure potentiality. You are consciousness observing experience. And consciousness has no fixed shape. It just is. But the ego, that voice in your head that thinks it is you, needs form. It needs definition. It needs, I am X. So it takes experiences, especially the painful ones, and builds a narrative. And that narrative becomes your identity. I was rejected, therefore I am rejectable. I failed, therefore I am a failure. I was betrayed, therefore I do not deserve loyalty. And you carry this as if it were absolute truth, as if it were a law of physics, but it isn't. It's just a story you told so many times you forgot it was fiction. Think with me. When you were 3 years old, were you shy? Were you confident? Were you fearful? You just were. Simply were. Without a story. Without trauma. Without a fixed identity. You laughed when you felt like it. You cried when it hurt. You played without asking yourself if it was appropriate. You were pure flow. And then life happened. People told you who you were. They compared you. They judged you. They hurt you. And little by little you built armor, a persona, an identity. And today? Today you confuse the armor with who you are. You think that if you take it off, you cease to exist. But the truth is the opposite. It is the armor that prevents you from truly existing. Because you don't live anymore. You perform. You play the role of who you think you should be, based on who you think you are, based on what happened to you. It is layer upon layer of fiction, and in the center of it all, a real human being trying to breathe under all that dead weight. Now comes the hard part, the part you won't want to hear. You don't want to be free. Relax. Let me explain. Consciously, yes you do. You want success, happiness, peace, fulfillment. But unconsciously, a part of you wants to stay exactly where it is, because freedom is scary. If you are free, you have no excuses. You have no one to blame. You can't say, oh, if that hadn't happened, or if I had had other opportunities. If you are free, everything that happens is your responsibility, and total responsibility is total weight. It is much easier to be a victim. Seriously, it is more comfortable. You can wake up every day and say, I am this way because of my father. I can't do it because of that ex. I don't evolve because life was unfair to me. And do you know what that gives you? Comfort. The feeling that it isn't your fault, that you are a product of circumstances, that you are doing the best with the cards you were dealt. But freedom? Freedom means looking in the mirror and saying, I chose this, every piece of it. I chose to believe the story. I chose to repeat the pattern. I chose to stay trapped. And if I chose it, I can choose differently. This should be liberating, but it isn't, because now you have no one to blame for what you have become. And more importantly, you have no one to blame for what you will yet become. It is all you. And that grounds most people, so they prefer the chains, because at least the chains have a culprit, a responsible party, someone who did this to them. Machiavelli said, a prince must be a fox and a lion. The fox recognizes traps, and the lion frightens the wolves. Most people spend their entire lives as sheep, caught in traps they built themselves, eaten by wolves that only exist in their imagination. Because being a fox means recognizing that the trap is yours. And being a lion means having the courage to roar against your own fear, and that demands something few have: brutal honesty with yourself. The honesty to admit that you haven't changed because you are afraid to change, that you haven't evolved because evolution requires letting who you were die, that you aren't free because freedom requires a courage you aren't sure you possess. That honesty hurts more than any betrayal, more than any rejection, because it is you admitting that the biggest obstacle in your life has always been yourself. So what do? How do you truly free yourself? It isn't therapy. Not that therapy doesn't help. It does. But understanding why you are trapped doesn't free you. It just gives you a map of the prison. It isn't forgiveness. Not that forgiveness isn't important. It is. But forgiving who hurt you doesn't change the fact that you are still operating with the rules you created because of the pain. It isn't time. Time cures nothing. Time only buries. And what you bury poorly returns to the surface when you least expect it. What works is something much simpler and much harder. You need to stop telling the story. Just like that. Simply stop. Every time you are about to say, I am this way because, you stop. Every time you are going to justify a decision based on the past, you stop. Every time the old pattern tries to run, you interrupt it. And do you know what happens when you do that? Silence. A strange void. Uncomfortable. Because you took away the crutch and now you don't know how to walk. But it is exactly in this void that freedom begins. Because when you have no story, you need to decide in the moment, based on what you want now, not on what you are afraid might happen again. I'll give you a practical example. You are meeting someone. The person does something that vaguely reminds you of the one who hurt you. Your automatic pattern is create distance, test, protect. But this time, you notice the pattern. You stop, and you ask yourself, what do I really want to do? Not what I should do based on the past. What do I want? And the answer might be surprising. It might be, I want to trust. I want to take a risk. I want to be vulnerable. And that terrifies you. Because vulnerable means without armor. It means being able to be wounded again. But it also means being able to be truly touched. And when you act from that place, not from the pattern, but from the choice, something changes. Not necessarily the external result. It might work out or it might not. But you change. Because you acted like someone free, not like someone controlled by a ghost. And every time you do this, the ghost weakens a little. The story loses power. The past lets go of your throat. I'll give you another example. You have a big opportunity. Scary. The kind of thing that can change your life but also has a real risk of failure. Your pattern would be, find 1,000 logical reasons not to try. Protect yourself from possible humiliation, from possible rejection, from possible failure. But this time you stop, and you ask yourself, if I were 5 years old before learning to be afraid, what would I do? And the answer is always the same. I would try. Because a child has no history, no scars, no self-protection pattern based on trauma. A child only has curiosity and courage. And when you act from that version of you, the version that existed before the wounds, you begin to rebuild who you really are under all the armor. There is something about the past that is important for you to understand. It is not the enemy. What happened to you, happened, and it made you who you are today. The scars, the wounds, the lessons, all of that shaped you. But there is a huge difference between being shaped by the past and being controlled by it. Being shaped means, I carry the experience as wisdom. I learned, I evolved, but I do not repeat. Being controlled means, I am a hostage of the experience. It decides for me. It limits my choices. It keeps me in the same place. A man who was betrayed and became wise about people can choose to trust again, with discernment, with open eyes, but he can. A man who was betrayed and became controlled by fear never trusts again. Anyone, including himself. Which of the two is stronger? The first one transformed the experience into a tool. The second became a slave to it. And here is the secret. The past doesn't decide which of the two you will be. You decide, every day, every moment, every choice. You can look back and see a lesson, or you can look back and see a sentence. A lesson equips you, a sentence condemns you, and most people choose the sentence. Because it is easier, because it gives a sense of identity, because it saves you from having to create something new. But the man who chooses the lesson, he becomes dangerous, because he has no predictable pattern, no automatic reaction, no button you can push to control him. He responds to the moment, not to the past. And that is real power. It is the difference between the man who reacts and the man who responds. Reaction is automatic. It comes from the past. It comes from the wound. It comes from fear. Response is conscious. It comes from the present. It comes from the choice. It comes from freedom. And when you start to respond instead of react, people around you feel something different in you. They can't define it, but it's like gravity. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to convince. You simply are. And that pure presence has weight. Let me tell you something about death and rebirth. There is a reason why all ancient traditions speak about dying to be reborn. Christianity, Buddhism, shamanism, alchemy. It isn't an empty metaphor. It is a literal instruction. You need to kill who you were to become who you can be. But nobody teaches you how to do this, so you stay in a pathetic middle ground, trying to be new while carrying the old. It's like wanting to move to a new house but taking all the furniture from the old one, including the broken pieces, including the ones you hate. You arrive at the new house and recreate exactly the same environment, and then you get confused because nothing changed. You changed your address. You didn't change your life. The death I am talking about is not physical. It is identitarian. It is you looking at the person you built over the years, with all their defenses, patterns, stories, justifications, and saying, you don't serve anymore, and letting it die. without ceremony, without mourning, without reminiscing, but I used to be. It's over. It died. And after that comes the part everyone is afraid of, the void. Because when you kill the old identity, a hole remains, an empty space where I used to be. And in that space, you don't know who you are. You wake up and don't recognize the guy in the mirror. You make decisions and ask yourself, but is this me? You feel lost, without reference. Most people panic here. They run back to the old identity. Or worse, they fill the void with any garbage. New ideology, new obsession, new addiction. Anything not to feel the void. But if you can endure, if you sit in that void without trying to fill it, something extraordinary happens. You realize that the void is not absence. It is pure potential. It is the womb where the new you can be gestated, but only if you leave the space empty, only if you don't try to force, control, or decide beforehand who you are going to be. You simply wait. And little by little, organically, a new form begins to emerge. Not constructed, discovered. You act differently, think differently, feel differently. Not because you decided, I'm going to be this way now, but because something authentic finally has space to exist. It's like when you clear a plot of land full of weeds. In the beginning, it's just bare earth, ugly, empty. But if you don't plant anything, if you just wait, the native plants begin to grow. The ones that really belong to that soil. You don't create who you are. You discover it. But first, you need to clear the land. And that means ripping out every root of the old identity. Every belief, every pattern, every story. And that hurts. Because some of those roots are deep. Some have been there since you were a child. Some you don't even remember planting. But if you want clean ground, you can't leave anything. Because if you leave it, it will grow again. It will take up space. It will suffocate the new. It has to be radical. It has to be complete. It has to be without mercy. So I'm going to be direct with you now. You are at a crossroads. It might not look like it. It might seem like this is just another video, just another bunch of words that will go in one ear and out the other. But it isn't. Because something inside you recognized the truth in what I said, even if it is uncomfortable, even if it is scary. And now you can't pretend you don't know anymore. You know you are trapped. You know the past controls you. You know you repeat patterns. You know you are wasting your life being a hostage to things that have already died. And now you have to choose. Path 1. You close this right here, go back to normal life, and pretend you didn't hear it. Continue telling the same stories. Continue being the same person. Continue dragging the corpse of the past into every new room you enter. And 20 years from now, when you look in the mirror and see an old man with the same fears he had when he was young, you will understand that you wasted the only chance you had. Path 2. You stop telling the story today. Now, not tomorrow, not after you process this, not when you are ready. Now, you take the main story, the one that defines you, the one you tell the most, and you stop telling it. When someone asks, why are you like this? You say, I don't know, I'm becoming someone else. And when the voice in your head tries to remind you of who you always were, you say, that guy died. Will it hurt? Yes. Will it be strange? Yes. Will the people around you find it weird? Yes. Because they need you to be predictable, to be controllable, to be their version of you, but you aren't theirs. You are yours. And a man who owns himself does not ask permission to be reborn. Machiavelli wrote, there is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success, than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. He was talking about politics, but it applies to your life. Creating a new order inside you is the hardest thing you will ever do, because everything, your history, your beliefs, your brain, the people around you, will conspire to keep you in the old pattern. But it is also the only thing that matters. Because in the end, when you are 80 years old and look back, the only question that will matter is, did I live my life or the life they told me to live? Was I free, or did I pretend I had no choice? Did I die trapped, or did I die having known freedom? If you chose on path 2. If you are ready to stop telling the story, write down below, Reborn. Not for me, I don't know you, for you. Because when you declare it publicly, you can't go back without facing yourself as a coward. And that creates commitment, and commitment creates reality. Now, I need to warn you, this isn't for everyone. Most will watch this, feel a shiver, and do nothing. And that's okay. The world needs trapped people, because without them, the free ones don't seem special. But if you are different, if you are really going to do it, there is a next step that I can't show you here. There is something that happens after you kill the old identity, a place few reach, where the past not only doesn't control you anymore, it becomes fuel, where every wound becomes strength, where every scar becomes wisdom, where you stop being the victim of the story and become the author of it. But that is only for those who have already died once. If you have died, see you in the next new life, where the old doesn't exist anymore, and what comes after begins.